If you're coming up against a project that isn't coming together or didn't come together in this season, it's worth considering doing something different. Doing the same thing as last season or doing the same thing as the last time you went to the project is probably going to produce the same results. There's a few things you can consider doing differently this time around. Have a plan, get creative, or don't be afraid to be selfish. Exploring any of those three things might change the way you look at your project and approach the process, and might change the results. This video is focused on digging into one project, and it's very specific and individual when and how much that's right for you as a climber. One important caveat here that we're not really going to cover in the video is that this shouldn't form all of a climber's year. Most of a climber's year should be spent on developing skills, climbing more volume, and having a variety of experience. When I'm in performance season, training continues, but it takes a different form. Usually the intensity of exercises stays quite high, but the volume goes down. I also reduce the frequency of training sessions and think about maintenance as a focus instead of development. I'm generally not trying to increase my loads or reps or weight on any exercise. I'm just trying to maintain the strength I've built in the preseason or the endurance I've built in the preseason and put my developmental adaptation potential into the specific things that the route is demanding from me. Having structure around coming into the next season of working on a project is really important. It gives you confidence that the outcome could be different than last year. As soon as the season closes on my project, if I fail to send, I start thinking about what my plan is going to be to get me there in better shape with better conditions or better fitness next year. The length of time you have until the next season can vary. Sometimes you have a spring season and a fall season, so you'll have a 2 or 3 month break to train or prepare in between. And sometimes you have a full 9 months or even longer between seasons. And all of these principles can apply no matter how long the time period you have. Setting up a progressive series of goals is really important as intermediate steps towards accomplishing the final goal of sending the project. I like to set this up with a checklist of things like doing all the moves, linking from bolt 3 to bolt 5, or low pointing from bolt 5 to the top. I set these up in a progressive way, and I tend to make as many of them as I can. Even when progress itself is quite slow, there are little attainable pieces of progress that you can have in each session. Low pointing is sending to the top from an intermediate goal. Low pointing is an invaluable tool in the projecting process for a couple of reasons. First, it allows climbing with reduced pressure and anxiety. When you start from the ground, you have the opportunity to send every single time, whether you're close or not. For a lot of us, that gets in our head. We get the performance anxiety. We know that we can possibly send the route this time, and we get excited. While that's fun and it really is motivating to keep trying from the ground, it can lead towards poor movement patterns, excessive tension while climbing, and a lack of freedom in your willingness to experiment because the stakes are high on every go. When you switch to low pointing, you take some of the pressure and the performance anxiety out of the equation because all that's on the line is checking off one of your intermediate goals rather than the big goal that usually induces the performance anxiety. Low pointing gets talked about a lot, and I think many climbers think they're low pointing, and technically they are, but I think they're getting outside of the spirit of what low pointing is. If you start from the ground and give a rip and make it to bolt 5 and fall, and then rest for a few minutes and try to climb to the top from bolt 5, while that's technically you have a low point from bolt 5, it gets out of the spirit of the way I like to approach low pointing, which is putting your best effort into accomplishing this link or accomplishing this intermediate goal rather than putting your best effort into trying from the ground and then giving whatever you have left into the secondary low point goal. Having a plan can be looked at in a few different time scales. From the biggest time scale, you can establish your training plan for the season to get you to performance season. On a slightly smaller time scale, you can plan out your performance season and estimate how many days you're going to have on the project. That can help you line up your intermediate goals to align with the number of opportunities you're going to have to achieve those goals. And on the smaller sense, you can have a plan for a given climbing day. One thing I learned from Steve Bechtel on this is to fill out a note card and take it with you to the crag. And that note card has written your plan and your goals for the day. One useful strategy here is to share those goals with your climbing partner. Often we make our goals in our mind, we establish a plan in our mind, and by the time we get to the crag, our mental or emotional state changes, and maybe we're a little afraid, or maybe we're a little anxious, or maybe we're a little overambitious, and we end up putting in 5 burns instead of the 3 we had planned, and we tear a flapper, or we dig ourselves in a recovery hole that we can't get out of. So making a plan for a climbing day and sharing it with your partner can keep you accountable and help you stay within the constraints that you planned, usually when you are in a more rational state of mind than when you're at the crag and you're psyched. My plan for a day of projecting includes everything from the warm-up to how many tries I'll have on the project, usually a specific goal that's just a little bit better than the last session. If I low pointed from bolt 4, then this session I want to low point from bolt 3. So I try to have a progressive goal that's a little better than the last session. I also like to have a cap or a limit on how many attempts I will do. And I stick to that 90% of the time. There's another 10% of the time where you do what you have to do to send, and when you're close and you're telling that it's right there, it's worth that one extra go. But 9 sessions out of 10, you should stick to your plan, limit your number of goes, and look for small improvements. It's important to have some level of flexibility within a plan. You might get tired faster than you thought and you need to do 1 less go than you had planned. You might have bad weather move in and prevent you from giving another productive try. It's important to keep notes and to reflect on these things and to attempt to stick to your plan within reason, but allow flexibility for outside circumstances and leave flexibility for how you're feeling on that day. When you go from not planning crag days to having a plan, it takes some time to learn what's realistic and what you're going to be able to stick to. And the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. You'll dial in on what is the right number of attempts on a given day and what can I recover from and when do I put myself at risk from doing 1 too many tries. One of the important parts of having a plan is having some contingencies and backup plans. Maybe you get rained out for the whole day and you don't get any climbing in. Having a backup plan of another route to climb on that's dry, or possibly a gym session that will serve your goals and keep you progressing physically towards your redpoint goal, that can be really useful. Also, having a good in-season maintenance training plan to keep you fit and strong throughout your redpoint season is another important part of planning. One of my best tips for sticking to a plan and following through on the goals you made pre-season is to have small, attainable progress goals. When we go from not sending to sending, that's a big step. That's a binary leap from 0 to 1. And having a series of small progressive goals gives you the ability to have wins on a daily basis. Process goals can be just as important as progression goals, where learning, refining beta, really learning anything new about the climb that's going to help your performance can be just as rewarding and just as important as making a new low point or a new link or even sending the route. And really taking joy in those process goals makes the experience more fun. The more ways you can identify that you can win, whether it's progress on a low point or improvement on beta on a move, but seeking progress within a session in any way is one of the ways that I stay motivated. Even if it's bad conditions and it's a rough session, if I learn something new, it's a success. Many climbers get so focused on the end goal of sending the route from the ground to the chains that they aren't able to enjoy the process and have the openness to learn along the way. And I think they miss out on a lot of development for them as a climber and just enjoyment within a given day.